There's the clap. Welcome everybody to Done Excluding You, this Right Voice for You free taster, and I'm so grateful to have all of you here with me. It's May 21st, 2023. For those of you listening to the recordings in the future and you're like, when did that even happen? We've already had like an awesome conversation before we started recording, but I just wanted to say how grateful I am to have all of you even willing to just kind of dive into this topic of actually including you in the world, because it's often a topic that brings a lot of stuff up for a lot of people, and we simultaneously like exclude ourselves from the entire world and our life and our relationship and often our business, while simultaneously so desiring to include us and have us. But it's like the one thing that usually scares the shit out of people the most, including myself. So I wanted to speak to you guys about this topic because Right Voice for You is a specialty class in Access Consciousness, and there's like 1-day classes, there's 3-day classes, there's introduction classes, and a lot of people believe this class is about singing. A lot of people don't really know what this class is about, are curious, and I just wanted to speak about what including you in the world can actually shift and change and transform that most of us don't recognize. And really with this topic, with Right Voice for You, I thought it was like about getting over shyness. And I thought it was about learning how to sound better and take away your awkwardness and, not be scared, before you were saying no or before you spoke in public and, all of that kind of stuff. And I realized that it's so much more than this. Like, I realized that having your voice is actually about you. It's not about anybody else. It's not about sounding better. It's not about looking better. It's not about getting anything right. It's not even about saying no. It's actually underneath all of that is your willingness to actually include yourself in the world. And really, when I say include yourself in the world, there's so many things that including you in the world actually creates and transforms that so many of us are not aware of. So first of all, I'd love to ask all of you, what does including you in the world bring up for you? Like when I say including you in the world, what does that bring up for you? Pop it in the chat and I can read it out. Fear, being me, hiding, to be heard. Not enough space. Yeah, to be heard, to be seen, be present in my universe, almost like I'm not meant to be part of the world. Where does my fallen freakish self fit? Wow. Okay, so everything that is for all of you. Oh, will you just join on Creator, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all names, shorts, boys, povids, and beyond. So that is the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. You can go to theclearingstatement.com for more information. But basically, we're just like shifting and transforming those energies that are up for you, that keep you from actually like shifting and changing what you'd like to shift and change. So this whole idea about having your voice, like I said, is not about sounding better. It's your willingness to include you in the world. And the thing is, it's not just receiving the world around you, it's allowing you to be part of it. And how often are we willing to receive the world around us? Like we're willing to be aware of other people's stuff, even if we don't desire to be aware of other people's stuff. We're willing to be aware of other people's judgments of us. We're willing to kind of just like deal with like anything that comes our way and just kind of take it all. So we're kind of like always receiving the world around us, but so often we won't allow ourselves to be part of the world. And so many of us like exclude ourselves when we make it about everybody else and never be willing to actually include our voice, whether that's in our business, whether that's speaking to what we uniquely know, whether that's speaking about possibility, whether that's saying no, like whatever that actually is. So how many of you are actually like, know that you're great at receiving the world around you, but when it comes to placing yourself in the world, not so much? And this is where, this is the moment where you go from including you to totally excluding you from the world. And so much of this exclusion of you is actually energetic. The thing is, what most people don't realize is most of us have this excuse as to why we won't include ourselves. Most of us have this excuse as to why we kind of won't flow energy out and impose ourselves in the world. So what, for all of you, what keeps you from actually including you in the world? And what judgment do you already have, or you've decided someone will have of you if you include you in the world? He comes up again. He says fear. I'm misunderstood and made wrong. Too much. Taking up someone else's space. Show off. How will be accepted, singled out. Oh, wow, safety. Okay, so everything that is for all of you, will you destroy it on credit, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, or name, shorts, boys, perverts, and beyonds. So most of us don't recognize, like, the only reasons, like, we won't include ourselves in the world, there's two reasons. One is to avoid a judgment we have of ourselves or to protect ourselves. And two, it's because you've already decided how people will react and what their judgment will be. But look at this. You won't allow yourselves out in the world. You won't actually include you in the world and have your voice because you're actually avoiding a judgment that you have of yourself. For those of you that popped in the chat, like that I'll be singled out or I won't be accepted or I'll be like, judged for being a show off. How many of those are the judgments you have of yourself? A little, a lot, or all of them? Because this is what most people don't recognize. In order to actually resist or react to anything, you have to have somewhere boarded as real and true. If you didn't have that judgment of you and someone, made a comment towards your way or judged you for something, you wouldn't be stuck with it. And this is what we have to start recognizing. Like, so often we're making everything, like, we make everything external to us. We go, oh, well, the perfect reason and justification is to, like, avoid a judgment that someone has of me. But you're only avoiding it to protect you from the judgments you have of you, while simultaneously constantly judging you for that thing. Does that make sense? So everything that is, and all the energy you're using to protect yourself from the judgments you have of you, we destroy and uncreate that times a gazillion. Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, shorts, boys, perverts, and beyonds. And this is where you're like, oh my God, I wish I never showed up here because now I'm not really going to have a really great reason, justification to not show up and totally be me now. And this is what I had to start looking at with this, with the tools of Right Voice for You. Some of you may know this, some of you don't. And I know a lot of you are new on here. I've been an Access Consciousness facilitator for 3.5 years now, and a bars facilitator for 4.5 years. And my kind of big thing, like I facilitate the Right Voice for You classes and the Relationship Done Different classes. And I started recognizing recently that my invitation to all of you is to invite yourself to more of you. And that's actually been my biggest invitation for me. It's like, the thing that you end up kind of teaching and talking about is the thing that's transformed your life. And mine is the invitation to more of myself. Because really, all of these tools of Access Consciousness are to get you to literally have more of you, more of the infinite being that you actually be. And so I'm someone that like judge myself immensely. And particularly this topic showed up and these tools changed so much for me in the form of facilitation and business, because I would actually like show up to a call, show up to a class, and I'd literally leave judging the hell out of myself, thinking that it was the worst thing I've ever done, thinking that nobody changed and nothing changed and there was no point being here anymore. And I literally did that for about the first 2 years of being a certified facilitator, and it was exhausting. I'd show up, I'd do this call, I'd leave the call, and sometimes I'd hysterically cry for like half a day or a day, and I'd just like literally head trip about, did I change anybody's life? Did they get anything out of that? Am I a contribution? Am I a gift? And I'd start looking at where people were rejecting me or where they were receiving me. And the thing is, I was making this about everybody else. Like I was making it about, okay, whether I'm good or not, whether I need more practice, whether maybe I need to learn more things, whether maybe I need to take more classes. And all that was doing was constantly making kind of the problem that I decided I had outside of me, rather than recognizing, wait a second, what am I actually avoiding here? And I'm like, wow, I'm avoiding being rejected. I'm avoiding being made wrong. I'm avoiding people going, oh my God, that was not worth the money. I'm never going to choose a class with her again. And then what I had to recognize is, holy shit, that's all the judgments I have of me, that I'm not enough, that I'm not good enough, that everybody's greater than me, that everybody knows more than me. Why would I facilitate? Because there's all these other people talking about exactly the same tools that I'm talking about. And so with these Right Voice for You classes, I began to recognize, like, this is about, like, everywhere I was looking for validation, and everywhere you look for validation, or everywhere you take something personally, is where you're actually excluding yourself. Because if you're including yourself, if you're including yourself in the world, you would know that your energy is a gift and contribution. That you being you, that you being your uniqueness, that you being your difference is actually the gift. That's actually what changes things for people. It's not about what you say, and it's not about what you do. So this topic of including you is really starting to recognize, like, where you do not believe that you are a gift and contribution, where you do not believe that there is something so unique about you that you literally just showing up as you and being you, and maybe even leaving the house some days, or maybe even having a conversation with the checkout chick, is literally changing worlds. So, sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat. Sandra says, oh, you've got your hand up. Do you want to, you can unmute yourself. We'll just do that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm wondering, when you're in this situation and you found out that people are judging you and it hits you, because I've experienced sometimes when people judge me and I, in my head, can just go, thank you. Okay. And other times it hits me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
What clearings can I use? Because I clear distractor implants and I know I have to continue to do clearings and stuff, but I feel like I'm missing some tool clearing to clear out when this happens.
Cool. So can I ask you a question, like all of you, a question? So when you say people judge you, and there's sometimes that you're like, thank you, and there's sometimes that it hits you as like a ton of bricks, the time that hits you like a ton of bricks, is that when it totally matches the judgment you have of you? Yeah. What if the true work is actually adoring yourself so much that you get that you are such a gift and contribution to the world, and being in so much allowance of you that nobody else can formulate a judgment of you either? What if that is actually having your voice? Because the thing is, if you had so much allowance of you and you didn't judge you anymore, there is no solidity for anybody else to form a judgment of you either. And this is what people don't realize. And this is why I facilitate Right Voice for You and relationships and different, because I'm like, everything comes back to ourselves, everything. And I only know that to be true because I've literally been through all of this and kind of changed and transformed everything. And like, now it's so much easier for me to be here with you guys. But just before I started recording, like I said, there's always stuff that comes up for me. There's still stuff that comes up for me. I was like, oh my God, I was like freaking out before this call. I was like, what am I going to talk about and stuff? But this is the thing. It's not about getting you to sound perfect. It's not about taking away your awkwardness, and it's not about taking away your shyness. It's literally about knowing that you showing up and including you in the world and speaking about whatever you desire to speak about is actually the gift, is actually what invites people to a different possibility. It's literally the willingness to actually like yourself enough to go, stuff it, I'm doing it anyway. And I think this is what most people don't realize. They think that there's something to fix. They think there's something wrong with them. They're like, oh my God, I need to do, I need to sound better. And it's like, no, because you being you is the absolute irresistible invitation. You being willing to show up, warts and all, from a space of total vulnerability and go, you know what? I've still got stuff going on, but that doesn't mean I can't create a global business. That doesn't mean I can't facilitate classes. That doesn't mean that my life doesn't work. And this is what I really would love you guys to get, is that you cannot get this right. Having your voice is literally getting that you are a gift and contribution to the world. That is actually the right voice for you. So Colleen says, how do we adore ourselves besides spending all our time clearing? Well, that's what like the Right Voice for You classes like get you to start, gift you the tools for. But again, like, how do you begin anything is to ask, like, what would it take to truly adore me? Like, universe, show me. Because this is the thing, like, you can spend all your time doing all of these clearing statements, but choice, like, it all comes down to choice. The clearing only literally clears the stuff that's in the way, stopping you from choosing to adore yourself. So the clearings aren't what actually change things, by the way, guys. If you haven't heard me say that, or you don't realize that, the clearings don't actually change things, but the clearings do move kind of the shit out of the way that are kind of making it harder to actually choose something different. So start asking the universe, like, what would that actually look like and be like? Because so many of us don't have reference points for that. So the other thing about like, sorry, Sandra, did that answer your question?
I'm sorry, actually not, because I know this. So I was just looking for a way to move forward when I realized that this judgment hit me because I apparently have this big judgment about myself. And I feel a bit lost, only clearing distraction implants and such, and I was searching for more.
Yeah. So I want to ask all of you, if you're kind of like stuck in this and you're like, okay, cool, I have these judgments myself, like, and they haven't changed. My question to all of you is like, Truth, are you actually willing to see, have, and receive yourself? Or have you decided that's someone else's job? And why I say this, because like, what if, so often we kind of use this thing of like, we'll use judgment to stop us. We'll go, okay, like we can't get over these judgments of ourselves, or it's really challenging to shift it and it's really challenging to change it. But remember, choice is what changes everything. However, if you look underneath that, it's like, what do you love about judging yourself? Or what part of it is actually working for you? And what I recognize for myself is all of these judgments I had about myself, about being a terrible facilitator and, you know, all of this other stuff that we all have, by the way. It's not, there is, I can guarantee there is not one facilitator that's had all this same shit come up. They just might not talk about it. But what I had to start looking at, I was like, it's got nothing to do with the judgments. If I no longer judged me, if all of these judgments literally disappeared tomorrow, if someone could wave a magic wand and take all of these judgments of me away, then what? Then I would totally receive me. Then I'd totally see myself. Then I'd have to be willing to acknowledge my greatness. Then I'd have to know that I was a gift. But how many of us use the judgments we have of ourselves as the perfect reason and justification to never receive us, to never receive the gift we are? And the crazy thing is, if we actually receive the gift that we are in the world, everything would work. And I know that sounds insane because you're like, well, why would I not be choosing that? But this is the thing, and this is where I kind of wrote the description of this, like, is now the time to find out what including you in the world actually changes and transforms. When you're in total allowance of you and have this space of no judgment, and you start to see yourself and you start to receive yourself and you start to like get that you're a gift, then your relationships change and transform. Because I'm sorry, your relationships are never personal. It's not about the other person. All the shit that's showing up in all of your relationships is literally where it matches the judgments you have about you to hold the judgments you have about you in place. Like, truth bombs. I'm just going to drop truth bombs and then just be like, bye. No. So your relationships would begin to work. Money, you would become irresistible to money. If you no longer judged, you were willing to get that you're a gift. This thing about getting that you're a gift, you cannot receive, like receiving and gifting occur simultaneously. You can't have one without the other. If you do not get that you're a gift, you cannot access receiving. So the thing that most people also don't realize is actually having your voice allows you to access more receiving than most people actually realize. if you don't begin to include yourself in the world, you cannot have receiving. It just doesn't, like, literally, like physics, like the laws of the universe, they don't actually work like that. So you would have, your relationships would begin to work. You would have money show up with ease. Your business would literally expand. And this is what I started looking at. I was like, well, if I didn't have those judgments of me, how many more people could I invite into this possibility? How many more people could I actually invite to this business? And then I was like, wow, truth, am I actually willing to have that? And I was like, no, because what's more uncomfortable to me, which is probably the same as some of you on here, what's more uncomfortable is people adoring me. What's more uncomfortable is actually people having gratitude for me and going, holy shit, that call, that changed something. We think that people judging ourselves is what's uncomfortable. But is it? Because how often do we judge ourselves? So is it the judgments people have of you that are actually uncomfortable, or is it actually the adoration and the gratitude that you're actually avoiding? So everything that is, and all the energy you're using to avoid the adoration and gratitude of you that would gift you, will you destroy and uncreate that times a gazillion? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all names, shorts, boys, povids, and beyonds. So kind of this thing is like everything is the opposite of what it appears to be. So if we didn't kind of focus on, because you've been focusing on changing, not just you, Sandra, but I mean, all of us have been focusing on changing, the judgments we have of ourselves for like probably a long time, probably since you started using the tools of access consciousness and before. And there's some of you that will be kind of stuck in that. Remember, if you've been looking at changing something from a particular point of view for more than 3 months and it hasn't changed, it's because it's not that. So it's like, I wonder what's underneath that. And what are you using these judgments to actually hold in place? And for so many of us, we've been using the judgments as the perfect reason, justification to never receive everything, include ourselves, because as soon as you include, you begin to receive. So does that help? Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions so far with any of that?
So it's the adoration that I have of me that I'm avoiding?
It's yes, that, and it's more so the adoration others have of you. Because the thing is, like, when other people adore you and are grateful for you, when someone says to you, oh my God, that just like made my day, or that just changed my life, or whatever, do you guys like perceive that energy when someone says that they adore you, or that just changed everything? If it doesn't match, like if you're judging you for like not being enough or whatever that is, if you've decided the opposite is true, do you notice like how uncomfortable you are in your body of like, oh, like what do I even do with that? What do I even do with that? Because
I perceive it when I say that to somebody else. I perceive they can't receive that.
yes,
Totally.
yes, absolutely. And this doesn't like necessarily apply to all of us, but it's like, yeah, how often when you even like acknowledge someone else, that you might kind of be uncomfortable, or things might become intense for you. And again, is it yours or is it theirs? Because this is the thing, when someone truly receives you through acknowledgement, through adoration, but they truly receive you, you cannot not receive more of yourself in that moment. If you're doing everything you can to not receive yourself, period, and if you have all these walls and barriers up because of the judgments you have of yourself to stop you from having more of you, then you will do everything in your power to literally reject that. And this is where like right voice, you, and relationship done different kind of overlaps, or this is how I facilitate these classes. And I see this because if you are doing everything you can to exclude yourself, if you have all these walls and barriers up to yourself for whatever reason, you would also do everything you can to not invite somebody in your life who actually receives you and actually adores you and actually acknowledges you. Because if they're in your life, then what? Then the reasons and justifications and judgments you have of you kind of are no longer valid. They begin to melt just by having that person in your life. So, sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat. Poppy says, yeah, would feel like I'm not that good. I don't know what I was talking about. Susie says I can receive adoration. I think that's what I look for in relationships. Cool. Alexandra, can you be doing that only with your body? I mean, you perceive it in your body. It's usually, that's where you kind of notice the intensity is like the body. Because your body also has like a level of, your body also has infinite receiving. It's just different. So Susie said it's like, being is not enough. I need to be validated as well. Yeah, and that's a big conversation. I can't remember which reawaken and rediscover call I did. I'll pop the link in the recordings, but we actually did a whole call about going beyond validation because so many of us believe that us being us is not enough, like that our being is not enough. Hence why we start to look for people validating us, because you also cannot see or feel that which you be. So, cool. Does anyone else have any questions before we finish up? Does this make sense? Like, do you get what including you and excluding you is? Like, and what it creates when you don't include yourself? And so this is where, like, including yourself, it doesn't have to be as, this is where I'm like, this is not about singing. When you sing, you actually do include you though. Like when you sing, when you dance, like when you do something to kind of show up, that is you including you. That is like you have this exchange with the world, because all of a sudden you're lowering your walls and barriers and you're actually receiving the world and allowing you to be part of the world. So do you guys notice, like when you sing or when you dance or like whatever that is for you, that after it you feel like you have more of yourself? You're like, oh, that felt really good. It felt really good because you've actually began to include you in the world. Instead of just having this kind of one-way street of like, you know, receiving everybody else, all of a sudden you've actually began to include yourself in the world and you've started to access that total space of oneness and communion. You're like, huh, the feeling good is you've just gained access to more of you. And I will post it. Actually, I haven't done it yet. Maybe I'll add it to YouTube, but I had a friend over a few months ago visiting Australia, and we were on our way to dinner, and I put a song on, and I used to kind of sing a lot. And I'm not a very good singer, but I used to just like sing in the car because it was fun. And I kind of just somewhere stopped doing that. And when we stop doing those things, that's when we're basically doing it because we're not willing to either receive judgment, or it's when we get to that space of not willing to actually just include ourselves, and those kind of things just stop. And I started singing, and he started recording it and making a video, and he was like, we're going to do a music video. And I was like, you're what? And he's like, we're doing a music video, keep singing. So we played the same song 3 times in a row, and I sang, and it was about a minute into it, and I was like, stuff it, what if I just enjoyed this? And I was like asking to embody some pro singer and dancer, and I like fully got into it. I like loved it. I'll have to put the video on YouTube. But like it was only 15 minutes and we got to the restaurant, and I was like, oh my God, like there was so much joy in my body and in my being and in my world. And I was like happier than I'd been in such a long time. And I was like, holy shit, that's me including me in the world. Which is like amazing. So it's like all of this, like your willingness to include you in the world is like allowing you to be part of it. It's really like whatever that looks like. So including you could be the willingness to say no. It's stating what's true for you and what works for you. It's also never making anybody else's reality greater than yours. It's never shutting down or shying away or making somebody else greater than you. And what you don't realize is when you by someone else's reality with money, with business, with body, with relationships as more real and true than yours, you're excluding yourself. So also having your voice is actually the willingness to have your reality, is the willingness to go, okay, people are acting insane with money. People are functioning from a lot of lack. People are going into scarcity. That's not my reality. That's you including you. That's your willingness to actually make your reality as great as anybody else's. And it's really being in this space of having no walls and no barriers and total vulnerability that actually allows everybody to contribute to you. So really, unless you're willing to actually include you in the world and actually have your voice from that space, you won't allow others to contribute to you. And this is where it can you can get to that space of feeling really lonely. And it's like, but how much of that's created because you're not actually including yourself. And if you're not including yourself, you can't actually receive contribution from others. Like you can't receive, period. So, and really, I think like more than anything, it's the willingness to mess it up. Like that's the total inclusion of you, is just the willingness to totally fuck it all up. It's to show up on a call, or it's to show up in front of like friends or family, or it's to sing, or it's to dance, or it's to say no, or it's to break up with somebody that is not working, but being willing to mess it up. Being willing to just say, you know what, I'm a gift, and just go anyway. So, yeah. This is where like the Right Voice for You classes are they're so big and so varied, and it's got nothing to do with singing at all. It's actually it's actually about including you. What would shift and change and transform in the world if you were actually willing to include you in it? And if you really start to look at the people, either the people that you admire or the people that have changed the world in some way, do you notice that there's part of them in everything they create? They're including themselves. Yeah. So fortunately or unfortunately, unless you're willing to include you, nothing works. And I think hopefully you can kind of see that by now. If things aren't working, maybe just ask like, okay, is this an area where I'm not actually including myself? And what would including myself actually look like? So, so yeah, does anyone have any questions before we finish up? Shamshad?
Yeah, that's Shamshad. I'm from India. And
India.
I had put it on the chat. 30 minutes in this call, I'm blown over. I used to think Right Voice for You is all about singing, and thanks for creating this. It has touched my heart. It's so expansive. So I would like to know if you're planning to visit India for Right Voice for You.
I was actually like planning that in April, and it didn't happen. So I will at some stage. I don't have dates, but I will at some stage. India's been pinging. So yes,
Awesome.
feel free to reach out to me, and I wonder what we can create.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And there are a few of us. There's not many Right Voice for You facilitators. It's still one of the smallest specialty topics. Because a lot of people don't know what it is. That's why I was like, I've got to talk about this. Like this class and Relationship Done Different literally have changed everything for me. Like we think that we've got to do a business class to change our business, or we've got to do a money class to change money. And of course, I'm not saying don't do that. That's also a contribution. But I think when you really get what including you actually creates, and how including you allows you to access receiving, and if you're not including you don't have access to receiving, it really can change everything with ease. And like I said, I haven't overcome my shyness. I haven't overcome my awkwardness. I don't sound any better than I did 3.5 years ago. The only difference is I'm willing to include me and know that I am the gift, as you are all the gift. And we're all here to invite the world to something different. And that doesn't have to be significant. You don't have to know what that is. And also through the Right Voice for You classes, a lot of people gain a lot of clarity with what their voice actually is, like what they are here to invite the world to. Ruth says, come to London. I'm coming to London. I'll tell you about my classes in a second, but Nicole says, can you talk about the difference of right voice view and RDD? For me, so the right voice view classes, there's a lot of the right voice view class is about basically creating the intimacy with you that allows you to show up, be seen, include you, and also never need the validation from others again. And there's a lot of exercises in the classes, and every facilitator is very different, but I do a lot of exercises. So it's a very, very, very interactive class. And you'll start to see with these exercises, it shows you how you function in the world. It's phenomenal. Like you'll do an exercise about drawing, and then through that exercise, you've just come to realize like how you create your life and where things aren't working for you. Like it's just amazing. Like it's so different. So that's right voice view. So it's very interactive. There's a lot of exercises, and you learn a lot of pragmatic tools to say, for example, you're going to get on a Zoom like this with, you know, all these people. You learn a lot of pragmatic tools about how to have ease with that. Like what you can go to be able to just show up and go, okay, to receive judgment, to get out of judgment of you, to sing if you desire to improve singing. But again, I can't sing, and I'm a right voice view facilitator. And it's not that I can't sing, but like, yeah, you don't have to sing to be a right voice view facilitator. Hence why I made the music video. My thing was going to be like, you don't have to sing to be a right voice view facilitator, or take the class. So that's like right voice. It's very, very interactive. And we do talk about the 5 elements of intimacy, but it's really, that's kind of, we get to this total space of being, basically. The RDD classes, then there's no exercises, and the RDD classes are really, the way I facilitate them, I bring everything back to you because it is, but they go in a lot of different directions, like stuff with how do you attract a partner, like, you know, then there's kind of pragmatic tools about obviously creating a relationship with you, but like, how do I deal with this thing in my family? And if my partner's doing this, what do I do? And how do I attract someone? And why am I single? And, you know, so it's kind of a much kind of bigger, broader kind of places that we can go, whereas we wouldn't do that in right voice view. We'd be talking about more how do you include you in the world, basically, and have ease with whether that's a business, whether you'd like to have more ease with talking to people, communicating with people, whether you want to have more ease in relationships, whether you just like to receive you more, whether you just like to actually access greater receiving. Like right voice view invites you to like all of that, and obviously depending on the participants depends where we go as well, because it's a very, very, like I said, broad topic as well. So you're welcome. I hope that helps. I'm like, how do I explain that? Does anyone else have any questions? Anything with what I said, or yeah, I think I will leave it with this. It's like really like having your voice is allowing you to be in the world with no need for apology. It's being like, I'm a gift and I'm here and I'm going to say what I'm going to say, not to be an asshole, but, you know, the willingness to just say what you desire to say. And your unwillingness to have your voice like disallows the contribution that you could be to every single molecule on the planet. If you're willing to include you, what could you actually shift and change and transform and invite the world to? And what are you actually not willing to impose? That you're so capable of imposing that the world changes because of your invitation. And I think for me, that's really what these classes are about. It's like, what are you here to impose on the world that would invite the world to an entirely new reality? And we all have something different. And this is where I was like, not excluding me when I assumed, oh, everyone knows about the tools of access consciousness. Everybody knows about the tools of light and heavy. Everybody knows, like, everybody knows. And I'm like, no, that was like the perfect reason and justification for me to never actually like basically have myself and receive myself, because we all speak about even just these tools very differently based on what we be with them, how we use them. And so each of you are aware of something that no one else is, and you have the potential to offer the world an entirely different possibility. And if you continue to hide, if you continue to exclude yourself, if you continue to never say what you desire to say, can people actually get a sense of the possibilities that you're aware of? And I remember Chris Hughes, who's like the facilitator of the facilitators of these classes, he said that, I might butcher it, but it was something like meanness is actually excluding you. You're mean when you withhold you from the world. That's actually meanness. And I was like, holy shit, like, and that was a pivotal moment where I started going, where am I making this about me? Where am I making me relevant? What if I'm not relevant? And not in a sense of like excluding me, but like, where am I actually taking everything personally and not actually making this about the possibilities that I'm here to invite the world to? Where am I making this about like numbers, and not numbers, but more so like the amount of people that validate that that was a great class or that was a great this, rather than going, if I change one person's world or invited someone to something different, I've literally changed the world. And Gary Douglas says that, he's like, success. He's like, I know I'm a success when I've changed one person's life. And I mean, he's invited hundreds of thousands of people to a different possibility. So, yeah, so how do you use your capacities to impose a different reality and invite people to something greater? And you're all already doing that, but it's like, if you're willing to actually include you even more, then like what else would actually be possible? So, so yeah, I guess I will leave it there if there's no other questions. As I said, I facilitate these classes and the RDD classes, and talk to the entities as well, which is also another class that invites you to yourself, but I might do a free call on that because that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I am doing a Right Voice View class in Montreal, Canada, July 1st to 3rd, which is translated into French as well. So that's in 5 or 6 weeks, 6 weeks time. And then London, July 28th to 30th, which is in 2.5 months time. And then I'm doing one in Adelaide, Australia, which is where I'm from. I head back to Australia at the start of August. So that one I think is going to be at the end of August in Adelaide. And there's also facilitators around the world as well. So you can also look online. I'll pop all those links in the recording email. And yeah, if you desire me to come to your country or you want to create with me or anything like that, then please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very reachable. I will always message. If I don't message you back, it's because I haven't received the message, but I always endeavor to message everybody back that messages me. So, and online, I'm going to start doing that. So, well, thank you for the reminder. Actually, in a month's time, I'm doing a Right Voice View introduction, which is a 2-hour online introduction. So we'll kind of continue on with this conversation and do a lot more clearings and some exercises and all that kind of stuff that you can start with. And there's also the 1-day Right Voice View classes that we can do based on any topic, and they can be held online. So they're like 3 hours a day for 2 days. And that's been pinging for me to create. So I don't have anything yet, but I will schedule. I think I will probably start scheduling doing those, like, you know, one every 2 or 3 months or something like that. And then like the 3-day classes in between all that, because the 3-day classes obviously dive a lot deeper. We can get to a lot more. And with the changes that occur with your voice on the first day is amazing to see. Like the 3 days, we just kind of keep adding. But anyway, all of you here are on my mailing list now. I don't send tons of emails, but I will send an email like whenever I add anything. So sorry, I'm just watching the thread. Oh, thank you, Ruth. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and also if you're new to me, I also every single Monday facilitate a free 30-minute call, like based on your questions or what's kind of up for the week. So I will also put the link in the recordings email as well. So that's just my contribution to you. And there's already, like, if you sign up, there's already 11 or 12 recordings in there or something. So does anyone else have any questions before we finish? your worlds are spinning. That's great. I'm glad. Sit with this. If you have any questions about the upcoming classes as well, then just reach out to me. You're all a gift, whether you recognize that or not, whether you're willing to receive that or not. I know sometimes it's even excruciating for me to still receive. However, I don't judge myself after calls now, and I don't cry after calls. And that is a massive thing, because otherwise I would have quit my business. And I think so many people do. So many people judge themselves so much that it just doesn't work. And that would be such a shame. So, okay, I will see you guys when I see you. And I'm grateful for all of you. And thank you for being here. Bye.